Good morning, folks. It is quite windy today, but I wanted to get a vlog in because I am going out of town this weekend to Austin, Texas. My sister is getting married. Of course, by the time you see this, I'll already be back in town. But I wanted to give a quick tour of the garden because I want to see how much it changes over the few days we're gone. I mean, I see this every day, so it'll be nice to see what actually happens. So this is one of my tomato beds, and as you can see right here, we have a bit of a problem. This whole mass, this yarrow, was up until the corner of the bed, and it was gone yesterday, just completely decimated. And I stuck a stick in the dirt where the yarrow had been, and there was a huge hole. And I have a gopher problem here on my property, but I've never had them come in the garden until yesterday. And I'm a little bit worried. You can also see over here, it munched on some of the yarrow. Ugh. And most of these beds are protected. I always make my beds with like chicken wire or some sort of wiring on the underneath because I know I have a gopher problem. But I know there's like 1 or 2 raised beds in this garden, I don't know which ones they are, that don't have wire on the bottom. Most of them do, which is good. But I also don't have wire, obviously, in my in-ground garden because I can't put wire there. And since I'm going out of town, I don't know what's gonna happen if this gopher decides to keep eating. So what I did was throw some of these fox urine granules down in the hole and like stuck it in. And then I read online that gophers have a really sensitive sense of smell and they don't like certain oils like eucalyptus and peppermint. And I have several essential oil types that they apparently don't like. So I put it everywhere in the bed, all over. There weren't any gopher holes this morning. I don't know if he just had a one-off day and decided to eat some, or was actually deterred by the fox repellent and the essential oils. But the people who are watching my farm, my neighbors, are going to be instructed to use that fox urine liberally if they see any more gopher holes in here. I mean, I'm not too upset about him eating the yarrow though, because I have so much of it in my garden there, and there, and there, here, here, and some in the in-ground garden. So of all the plants he could have eaten, this was probably the best choice. Now, if y'all remember my last video, my tomatoes were only about yay high, and they have grown so big in these last few weeks. I have 7 tomato plants in here, and the varieties are Giant Crimson, Amish Paste, Paul Robeson, Mexico Midget, Gold Medal, I think another Amish Paste, and a German Pink, all along this trellis here in this first garden bed. And they are looking pretty healthy. I've already had to tie them up, a couple of them, to the trellis. I probably won't do any more trellising before we go. And I don't prune my tomatoes down to a single leader all of the time. If you live in a really humid environment, it's beneficial to prune your tomato plants heavily because of disease and fungus that can occur with lots of rain. But here in the desert, we're really dry, and having extra foliage on these plants, there's not a huge risk of fungus unless you're top watering, which I don't do and you shouldn't be doing with tomato plants anyways. And having the extra foliage just kind of helps shade the plant out and protect it from the sun. So until we get our monsoon season in August or September, I won't be doing a whole bunch of pruning on my tomato plants. And this is a Rosetta Cosmos, which is going crazy with blooms. I think I'm gonna pick several of these today and take them into the kitchen so that it keeps producing more blooms while I'm gone. Look how pretty that is. The tomatoes we planted together in these pots are doing wonderfully. I'll be able to trellis them over here soon, but not quite yet. And this jalapeno here, I tried one of these the other day and it was pretty dang hot. When I had first tried the jalapeno pepper like several weeks ago. It was a really small one, and it wasn't very spicy at all. I was disappointed, but I took a chunk out of one the other morning. My mouth was on fire. So that's exciting. I love hot peppers. If you saw my last video about the onions, you'll know that several of them have bolted, and I just recorded that yesterday. I don't see any more bolting oh, that's a lie. There's one. Darn it. Well, I expect many of these will be bolted by the time I get back from Austin. But, oh well, I'm going to replant these with probably corn, and we'll get started on our new bed of food. Here in this bed, I have mostly squash around the edges, different types of squash, and peppers down the middle, with the exception of this guy. This is a Genovese basil. And here on this trellis, I have Armenian cucumbers, which have really taken off. They started slow, but I think it was still getting too cold at night for them to do really well. But they're rocking it now, and I even have one coming up that I direct sowed at the beginning of the season, so that's exciting. This is a honey boat squash. It's a delicata variety. This is a plain old yellow squash, along with this one, which has a little squash on it. Isn't that the cutest thing? I thought about taking him off because he's really small, and I don't really like my plants to start fruiting when they're still young, because I want them to get really established with good root systems before they take a lot of energy and put it into fruit. But I'm gonna let this one play out. Hopefully it won't affect the plant. I'm not expecting that squash to get very big because the plant is so small. But I say if he wants to grow, then we'll let him. Oh, and I just saw this guy. Here's another little yellow squash. Hi, little guy. And this one is a tromboncino squash. And here's my pepper and squash bed. This pepper is not doing the best. It's a habanada. It's one of the varieties that I was really hoping for this year, along with the Sugar Rush peach pepper, and both of them did fairly poorly in my garden. I have a few Sugar Rush peaches that kind of like made it through a transplant slump, and they're doing better now. They're just growing much slower than all of my other peppers, and I'm not sure why, but I've never grown these two varieties before. So hopefully they'll grow and produce fruit, and I can save the seeds and then start developing a variety that grows really well here. In this bed I've got mostly peppers, with this huge chamomile plant that I've been picking off of daily and saving a ton of chamomile from. I actually had to tie him up because he was sprawled out so big that he was shading out this pepper and this pepper. So this morning I just took a piece of baling twine and like made him a little bit more upright. I think it'll be fine. These peppers are doing great. This is a shishito. And here's one of the Sugar Rush peaches that's doing real well. But here's a smaller Sugar Rush peach. See the difference? But this guy has also been shaded out quite significantly by this chamomile. So hopefully tying this guy up will help out a little bit. And this is a jalafuego, which is a spicier version of a jalapeno. I had terrible luck with these plants last year, but they are one of my fastest growing peppers this year. So maybe it was just fluke circumstances last year, I'm not quite sure. But I'm excited for these because I didn't really get a harvest last year when I grew these. And here's another tromboncino squash. I just threw this guy in here, and I think it's gonna be a mistake because they're a sprawling kind of squash. And I had wanted him to grow this way, and I keep putting him over here so he'll sprawl out of the bed, but he's not staying. And I can't have him covering up these plants. Look, guys. Oh, I have my first giant crimson tomato. Look at this guy. I'm sorry if it's loud. I'm hiding behind the garlic for a windbreak. But I wanted to get this vlog out before I left. The giant crimson tomatoes have been doing superbly here. I had 100% germination on them. And the seeds are from MI Gardener. There's a whole story behind that. You can head to the MI Gardener channel to learn about the giant crimson tomato. But they are doing so well here in the desert, and I'm very surprised. pleasantly surprised. Here, my eucalyptus plant, I guess. I know they grow into trees, but he's starting to put out more leaves. Survived the winter, which is amazing. So I will be harvesting more eucalyptus pretty soon. And this is some holy basil. This is one of the only holy basil plants that survived. I had terrible luck germinating them, and then the rest petered out when they were seedlings. So I'm taking extra good care of this one because I would love to make some holy basil tea from this plant. And this tomato is an unknown. I just threw him in here. He's doing well. I'm not quite sure which variety it is. I know it's an indeterminate variety, so I will have to stake both this tomato and the giant crimson. I'm not sure what I'm gonna stake them with yet. I'm not a fan of tomato cages. They don't do very well. They're kind of flimsy, but I'm sure I can find some sort of, oh, there's something. I can use those to at least stake one of them. But it's not gonna happen today. They will not fall over in the next few days that I'm out of town. So that will be next week's project. These 4 tomatoes are determinate varieties, which means they will not keep growing endlessly. They will grow to a certain height, set out a bunch of blossoms and fruit at the same time, and then be done. And as you can see, they already have blooms on them. Tons. These are the Grand Marshal F1 hybrid from Johnny Seeds. And I stuck 4 of them in this 4x4 bed because they are determinate and they won't need a whole lot of trellising. They might need some sort of staking just to make sure they don't fall over and break in this wind. But they're doing fantastic. Some of the fastest growing tomato plants that I have here. And this is one more tomato bed that I have. I have 9 tomato plants down this long trellis. This bed is actually larger than my others. This is 10x4 instead of 8x4. So I was able to fit more tomato plants in here, and then all along the edges I have various herbs and flowers, such as bachelor's button, which has not bloomed yet. It's an interesting little plant. These are Bright Lights Cosmos, which are gorgeous. Look at those. Some miscellaneous peppers. This is Thai spice basil. It smells so good. And here on this edge, I have cucumbers, which are doing poorly. I think I just purchased one. I have 2 types of cucumbers that I grew this year. One is the Market More, well, 3 technically, but the Armenian cucumber, which is over there in the pepper bed that I showed you guys already, it's technically a melon, but you eat it like a cucumber. But I ordered an F1 hybrid from Johnny Seeds called the Thunder Cucumber, which is supposed to be more heat tolerant. And I have not had luck growing that cucumber. These bigger ones that have several leaves are ones that I grew in soil blocks and then transplanted out. And then I have a few seedlings that I just threw seeds in here, and all of them are just growing so slowly. And I'm not quite sure why. The weather hasn't been too hot yet. The max we've gotten to is the mid-90s. But it didn't stay there very long. It was the afternoon only. And the nights are still pretty cool, but all of my other heat-loving plants are growing just fine. So I'm not sure if it's the soil. It's probably just me. But I don't know if we're gonna have cucumbers this year, folks. I just don't see them growing big and full enough before it gets too hot that the cucumbers don't want to grow anymore. This wind is killing me. I hope this video, it doesn't sound too terrible, but I'm gonna put it out anyways. In both of these trellis beds, I planted several beans, which roly-polies ended up eating most of. So I only have like 3 beans on each side, and I plan to seed more. I just haven't done it yet. They are the purple hull pink eye cowpea, which I really want to try. So I'll probably seed, I don't even know if I have any more. I might have planted all of my seeds because I kept re-sowing. I would just come out here in the mornings and find roly-polies completely eaten through an entire seed pod, which is so disappointing. But I mean, I've tried a lot of things. As you can see, I have no mulch here because the roly-polies don't like the light. So if you plant the seeds and then move the mulch out, it will largely keep them away. The problem is we're so dry and windy here that if I move the mulch away, the seeds can dry out, or the seedlings can dry up if I don't water them consistently. So I did have amazing success with one of my beans, and that's the asparagus bean. And these guys are rocking it. Look at these. So these will be trellised soon. Once they get tall enough, I'll just come over here and kind of twirl them around, and they'll just take over this whole trellis. And asparagus beans can get up to like 2 feet long. They're super cool to walk through because they just all hang down. They're really good green bean, not a very good dried bean. But green beans, perfect. I'm gonna can a ton of green beans using those asparagus beans. So the asparagus beans are by far my most successful bean this year. And here we have more Bright Lights Cosmos. And this is largely a pepper bed. Surprise, surprise, there's more yarrow. More yarrow. As I said, the gopher can eat that. As long as he eats nothing else in my garden, he can eat yarrow. But my peppers in this bed are doing wonderfully. They've really taken off, including the new ones I transplanted from the New Mexico State University pepper sale. They aren't growing quite as fast as my others are, but I did transplant them late and they were smaller. But they're plenty green. They don't have any disease or anything on them, so I'm expecting them to catch up fairly quickly and do just fine with the rest of the peppers in this bed. This one is the roulette habanero, which I'm excited about. It's a 50-50 hit or miss on whether this pepper's hot. And as you can see, I never change these out to the white tags. It's on my to-do list. A lot of these peppers in here are ones that I've saved seeds from, so the M means it's mine. So this is seeds from a padron pepper that I saved last year. And this is a shishito pepper that I saved seeds from last year. And I did save seeds from the largest peppers and the best plants. So I'm hoping after one generation, these plants are going to do better than the rest of the peppers I planted in here. And in fact, both of those have blossoms when a lot of the other peppers don't. Here we go, some blossoms on my shishito pepper and my padron pepper. Here in the in-ground garden, I think all of the potatoes that I'm going to have come up have already come up. I had a pretty bad potato year. Of all of the potatoes I planted, I would say only about 1/3 of them, or even less, maybe 1/4 of them came up. I'm not quite sure what happened yet. It could have just been that I cut the potatoes into too small of sections, and the sections that had eyes on them weren't ever going to sprout, which is very much a possibility. I'm leaning towards that. But the ones that did come up are looking great and healthy, especially with the shade cloth over here, because I didn't have them with the shade cloth last year and they were struggling so badly in the heat. But this is a dark red Norland potato and it looks pretty darn good. Super healthy. All in these walkways, I have volunteer sunflowers from last year that I'm just leaving, especially when they're in the walkways, because they're not going to be taking the nutrients out of these beds. So I have a couple like these right here that are actually in the beds, but this is also a spot where no potatoes came up. So I'm not too worried about it taking the nutrients of another plant, because there's not really a plant here for it to take nutrients from. But one of these sunflowers is already starting to form a flower head, and I'm super excited to show you guys what these look like. These sunflowers are just, I got the seeds from nativeseeds.org, and it's a New Mexico variety that grows wild. So it's technically a wild sunflower. It's considered a weed in some parts of the state. We don't get enough rain here for it to be a weed. Except it is a weed in my garden because I water my garden frequently. So it reseeded itself everywhere. I probably have at least 10 sunflower plants in here, and I'm going to let all or most of them grow. Yay. And a lot of these spots where potatoes didn't come up, I sowed like squash seeds. I just put them in the ground right under the drip line. So I should have squash seedlings coming up in several of these blank spots, because if I'm not going to grow potatoes, I'm going to grow something else. And I'm fairly certain, I mean, it's been a couple months since I put these potatoes in the ground. Not to mention the rest of these potatoes are huge by now. So if they're not going to come up by now, they're probably not going to come up at all. And I'd rather grow something that will produce me food by the end of the season than wait for a potato that's not going to give me anything. Here I have volunteer pumpkins that accidentally occurred when I threw a pumpkin rind in here last year. I'm gonna let them go, let them do what they want to do. I'm not mad about it at all. Here's another giant sunflower. He's in the walkway as well. Let's get these weeds out of here though. So many sunflowers. Sunflower, 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 sunflower. Oh, see here? Here's one of the little squash seeds I put in the ground. And I did, when I put these seeds in the ground, I did bring the mulch away like that because I had roly-polies eating some of them. But I've just been watering a little more frequently. As long as I water frequently enough, the ground will stay moist and the roly-polies won't eat them. And once you get past the shade cloth structure, I have mostly squash and some pepper plants. These are not looking too good. Here and over here and in the next row. The pepper plants that I transplanted in here don't look the healthiest, but they have not died yet. So of course, until they die, I'm not gonna rip them out. And I've just had several squash growing here. I can only name some of the squash in my in-ground garden because I just started coming out every morning and throwing seeds down. I was losing squash to cutworms, so I did my whole aluminum foil method, but some of them still didn't survive. And I was just running out of time to get winter squash in the ground because they need more than 120 days to fully come to fruit. So I just started grabbing seed packets every morning and sowing squash seeds wherever I could. So naturally, I didn't label anything. Neither of us are gonna know what comes up until the plant starts to fruit. Oops. But some of them still have labels from the originals that I transplanted. This is a Seminole squash, and it doesn't look too hot, but it has started growing some new leaves. So I'm holding out hope for this guy. That one is most likely a tromboncino because for some reason the tromboncitos are doing so well in my yard. It's unbelievable. Oh, and I also randomly threw some bean seeds down. This is a bean, not sure what kind, and right next to it is a squash seedling. Oh, and right next to it is another. So this will be a fight to the death on which one I want to survive. I'll probably pull out the bean and let one of these two guys fight it out for whichever one looks healthier. Look at this! I don't remember planting a squash seedling right here. That's a little squash seedling. Huh. Interesting. Cool. Kind of went crazy with the squash once all of mine died. I put seeds everywhere. It's gonna be a heavy squash year, hopefully. At least if I can't have potatoes, I can have squash. Oh look, more yarrow. Well guys, I'm gonna get out of here. This wind is really hard to deal with. I hope the audio is okay. I'm probably gonna post it anyways because I don't know what to do if it's not. But next week when we get back from Austin, I'll have to do a better tour on a less windy day and see how much the garden's changed. I'm so excited to be gone for a few days and see how the garden changes because you don't really see it when you're here every day, several times a day. And then also next week is the final week of the chicken nuggets lives. So I don't know, I've done a meat bird harvest video before, but YouTube doesn't really like showing that. Of course I'll take a video the day of the processing and everything, but as for the actual, I don't know if that'll be on here. Leave me a comment down below if you'd like to see that. There are tons of videos online showing that. I can absolutely do it. I don't mind, but this isn't about me, this is about you. So next week, it's a brand new week, a very big week, and I'm excited to get back here. I will catch you guys on the next one.